In this video, we're going to create our own ChatGPT interface. However, it's going to have a little bit of a twist. What we're going to do is actually build an AI agent that can interact with your Bubble database. So what do I mean by that? When instructed, this custom ChatGPT will actually be able to create line items inside of your Bubble database. So it's almost using your app just like a normal user would. Look, there is so much that we need to cover here. So what I'm going to do is hand this one over to Luca, and he's going to walk through everything you need to know.
Hello everyone, today we're going to be building a chat interface that allows ChatGPT to actually create things within our database. So we have a normal chat functionality here. So if we create a new chat, we can see that this is the chat that we're in now. If we say hello, you can see that we get a normal chat back here. Then if we say make me a document on Bubble, we hit send and wait a little bit for it to generate a document. You can now see that we have created a document in our view here. And actually, if we go to the data tab and have a look at documents, you can see we've got introduction to bubble.io, and we've actually created that within our database here. So I'm going to be walking through these steps here. We're going to create this chat interface, the messaging interface, and then we're going to set up all the backend steps here that we need to do to get this working. So let's jump into our Bubble editor. Okay, now we've got a new page. The first thing we will build out is our repeating group for our chats here. So first of all, we want to create a group here. Then we'll click onto our page, make it a row. And now you can see our group is aligned to the left. We'll call this chat group here. And then we'll go and uncheck make it fits width, and we'll hit this vertical alignment, vertical stretch here. Perfect. So now let's drag our repeating group here and then drag in our text for each chat within the repeating group. Now we can click onto our chat group and now make it fit width to the content here, and we'll make the min width 0. So we want to click onto our repeating group here. And what we want to do is we want to go to appearances and uncheck fixed number of rows and make the minimum height of each row as 0. Then we'll go to our text here, and then we'll add margins on the top, bottom, and the left and the right. Perfect, looks pretty good. So next we'll again go to the appearances of our repeating group here. We'll get rid of the separators and the border. Go to layout and then untick fit height to content. Now, if we go back to our group here, we'll just give it a different appearance to make it look a little bit like ChatGPT. So we'll add a background, do a flat color, and then for my grades, I like to do black, and then let's change the opacity. So we'll do opacity of 5, and then that's looking pretty good. So next we want to do our create new chat button. So we'll add in some text to the bottom of our group here. We'll add an icon as well. And if we scroll down, Bubble has a nice icon that is very similar to ChatGPT, which is this one here. If you type in pen, we'll make that black. And then if you hit shift, you can select both that icon and the text. And then if you right click on that selection and group elements in the row, that can just save you a bit of time with formatting the button here. So now we're gonna make all of the minimum widths and height as 0, so it's nicely aligned for us there. And we'll go to our text element and make it fit centrally. And finally, we'll change this text here to new chat. So to add a little bit of breathing room, a bit of dead space, we will add 20 pixels of margin on the top and the bottom, and then 10 on the left and 10 on the right here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Next up is our actual chat interface. So we're going to want to add a group into here, and we'll call this message interface. Then we're going to want to do a vertical stretch on this as well. Perfect. Now, if we grab our multi-line input, we'll drag that in. We'll also grab our repeating group for our messages, and we'll also grab an icon for our send. So if we say arrow, we'll just pick this one. Again, we'll make it black. And now we can start formatting our actual group here. So if we click onto the group message interface, we'll do centered. So everything comes up in the middle here. And then if we grab our groups, we'll also horizontally align it to the center as well. Okay. Similar to the button for the new chat, we're gonna hit shift, select both of the elements we wanna group in a row. And once that row is about, now we can actually fit width to the content here. And then we'll grab our icon and align that centrally also. Now that's done, we'll just add maybe 20 pixels of margin on the top. Now we can start formatting our repeating group. So we'll make it a fixed width for this one and we'll do 600. And then we'll let the height go to a fixed width of 800, perhaps 600 as well. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So next, what we're going to want to do is add in our actual messages here. So if we grab two text, copy and paste it, we'll align the second one to the right. So this one's going to be our message from ChatGPT here, and this one's going to be the message that we post to ChatGPT. So what we want to do is, for our message, make it look slightly different. So if we actually go to padding here, we'll add 10 padding on the top and the bottom, 5 actually. Then we'll add 30 on the left and the right. And then we'll add 20 pixels of padding on the right also. And then we'll do 20 pixels of padding on the left as well. To make it line up a little bit nicer, what we'll do is add 10 pixels on the top of the bottom for both ours and ChatGPT's messages here. Okay, so now we've got the padding, we can actually go in and add a background and style, make it a flat color. And again, we'll go in and we'll do 10 here for our gray. And then we'll make our roundness 10 also. Okay, that's looking pretty good. One thing we'd want to do is again go to the appearances of the repeating group, uncheck, make fixed number of rows, make the minimum height of each row 0, remove the separators, and then we also probably want to remove our border style, but let's add a shadow here for no vertical or horizontal offset. And we are updating the one that I did in the tutorial, but let's make it actually look nicer. So 10 pixels of rounding, and I think that's looking pretty good. Now, the next thing we want to build is actually our document. And all that is going to be is a group with 2 pieces of text in. So if we drag that in here, we'll drag it above, we'll make it a fixed width of 400. And then we will leave this as it is, fit the height to the content here. And I actually prefer 400, so we'll go into our actual repeating group and make it 400 as well. Make the minimum height actually 200 and the maximum height 400. Okay, so if we actually go back into our group E, which we'll rename now to document. Now let's drag in our text. This is going to be our title, so we'll make it 18 and bold. We'll leave the text as normal, but we'll go into our group here, change the roundness to 10, add that shadow, make it slightly red, and then we will go back into that group and then add some padding, and we'll do 20 pixels on the top, the bottom, and the left and the right. And then we'll add 20 pixels of margin on the top and the bottom. And now we're pretty much set up to start actually creating the workflows here. So before we do that, we'll actually go, and if you actually create a chat data type, the chat has a name, and you also want to create messages, which is message content as text, JSON as text, and user as user. And then we can go back to the chat and then actually create a list of messages here, which would look like this. You'd then find your data type of messages and then tick, make this field a list. Okay, so once that's all set up, we can actually go in to our repeating group. If we scroll up, we can make this chat, and the data source, we'll just do a search for all the chats here without anything. So it's just everything on application. That's very simple, but it works for the tutorial. If you were actually going to build this as an application, you could do current users chats, for example, and have a chat list under the user, like so. So now we can actually go to our text option here, and we can say the text is going to be the current sales chat name. Amazing. We can go into here and we can say the type of content in here is going to actually be messages. And then on our message group here, we'll create a custom state. If you click this eye arrow, that's essentially like a short-term store of data. This is going to be the chat that we're currently on. Data type chats. We'll hit create. Then we can go in and then we can choose the data source as group message interface chat. And the chat's messages. Now we can actually go into our chat here, our messages, and we can define what these things will be. So this is the current sales message content. This will also be the current chat message content, but we will want to define some rules for this. So if we go here to our ChatGPT message, we're going to uncheck matrix width, and we're going to leave collapse when hidden on. And we're going to say when the current sales message user is empty, this element is visible. Similar, we will also uncheck make this visible on page load. Define that rule again. So this chat's message user, but this time it is the current user. This element will be visible. Okay, that looks pretty good for now. For the data for the group, we're going to want to create our document. So if we create a new data type in document, add the data type of text, and that's going to be our body. So if we rename that to body here. And then we also want a title for our document as well. Obviously you could add an image. So once we've created our document data type and the fields of body and title, we can go to our design tab, go to appearances, type of content, we can choose document, and we're going to leave the data source blank for the moment. We go back to the message interface and we'll set another custom state, and this will be document. Type document, hit create, and then again we can go back in, find the data source, find that message user interface, and we'll say it's that document. Gonna want to go to layout, again make it not visible on page load and collapse it when it's hidden. Let's add a collapse operation to make it look a bit nicer, and then we're fully ready here to jump into the APIs. So the first thing we're going to want to do is actually get our ChatGPT API working. So if we go plugins, we will add another API. We'll call this OpenAI private key and header. The private key, we're going to need to go to OpenAI. Going to want to create an account, head over to dashboard, API keys, create API key, create key, copy, go back to ChatGPT, type in bearer, space, and then paste in your key here. We want to add a shared header, which is going to be application JSON, content type, application JSON. And then we can actually go to our API reference here within OpenAI's website. We can scroll down to chat completions, create chat completion. We're going to be doing functions here. And if we copy that, we can go back to our API connector plugin here and import another call from CURL. We'll hit import. We can actually delete these two headers here because we've already set that up. But it's given us our endpoint, which we're going to call, and it's made it poster. So we go to action. This is how you essentially are able to create an action with this API call, and we'll say functions. Okay, perfect. So at the moment, the stock function is given us is create or get weather essentially. But what we want to actually do is have it create a title and then the body of a document. So in previous videos, we've just plugged this into ChatGPT. But let's actually recode this from scratch. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the name of the function. We're going to call this create document. Change the description. And the name of the description essentially is telling the AI what to do, almost like a prompt. So the description is when the user asks, create a document that is text, or create a document that is a JSON object that contains a title and document body. Okay, and now here, parameters. This is essentially defining what the output is going to be. So it's already type object. The properties will change this to title, leave it as string, and the description is title of the document. Get creative, for example. Okay, perfect. And what we'll actually do is we'll delete this, but we'll grab this again and paste it into that space left over. Then we can define another one. So we'll define the body description, the body where all the main information of the document should be. For example, very simple. Now it says required here, but we always kind of want a title and a body, and it's set to location, which was the thing before. So what we can do is rename it to title. We can add a comma and then define another one, which is going to be our body. Tool choice auto, we'll leave that as that. Now we've edited that, we're going to move on to the parameters here. And what we'll do is change the property of location to our title that we want here. Add a description. And here in the unit section, we'll call this the body. Type, again, we want string. But instead of enum, we're going to change this to description again. And then we want to copy how this was done before. So if we delete all the Fahrenheit and the square brackets here, then define the description, that's going to be the main text of the document. That's because we've actually added a space. So functions have to be a full string, essentially, unbroken. So if we reinitialize again, you can see we have got our initialized call here. That's fully working. Now we need to actually go in and edit the actual chat element here. So what we'll do, we need to dynamically change the content because that's going to be what the user types in. So if we do this, add in user underscore the content, you can see a field pops up here. So we type in create document on life, hit initialize. We should get a different payload, and that payload should be that tool calls. So you can see we've got message tool calls here, and then we've got our function arguments, and it's given us a type for tool, which is life. The body life is a blah, 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 blah. Cool. Save that. One thing we do want to do is add in history. So the actual chat GPT knows what's going on here. So what we'll do, add a greater than sign, type in history, close it, and then add a comma. That comma is very important. And to initialize this, we need a bit of fake history. So if we actually go back to our API reference here, we can just grab a couple conversations in the default mode, a couple messages, sorry. So we'll go back, paste that in, initialize, amazing. And then it is initialized with our history here. Perfect. So first of all, let's actually go in and create the initial workflow so we get our chat element working. So if we go into our button here, we want to add a workflow. When this is clicked, we want to first of all create a new thing. That thing is going to be a message. It's going to have content, it's going to have JSON, and it's going to have user. It's going to be the current user for the user, the JSON. If we actually go back to our messages here, all we want to do is grab this curly bracket, the first curly bracket where the role's user and the user content. So if we just grab between the curly brackets here, we can go and paste that in and then clear that expression. Then we're actually going to want to edit this between the two quotation marks, and it's going to be the multi-line input A's value. Again, the content is going to be the multi-line input A's value. And then once that message is created, we want to add it or make changes to a thing. That thing is going to be a group message interfaces chat, and we're going to be adding the result of step one. So we're going to be adding that message to the chat. Then we'll reset the relevant inputs, which is our multi-line input there. And then we're going to want to send this message to ChatGPT. So if we go into plugins here, we'll grab our OpenAI Function-Calling API call, the user content. Because we've actually just reset the relevant inputs, we can just go into the rel step 1 content. And then for the history, again, we're going to want to go to group message interfaces, chat, messages, and we want to give it all of each item's JSON here. Perfect. So at this point, if we go back to our checklist, we've created the chat and message interface. We've set up our chat GPT and our functions call. Now we need to actually recognize the JSON. So if we actually look at our payload we get back from ChatGPT here, what we can see is that the payload it gives us is being recognized as JSON. That's how it comes up with us being able to do all this. But the actual JSON payload in the functions argument is not currently being recognized. And so we need to create a workflow that recognizes that JSON here. And how we do that is actually create a backend workflow that we're then going to call with an API. So if we create a workflow, this is going to be an API workflow. We'll check this. We'll call it document underscore JSON. And we'll also ignore privacy rules here. Then we're going to add another action, and that's going to be return data from API, other content type, application / JSON. And then actually we need to go back to our API call because we need to add a parameter, and we'll call that the JSON. And then what we're going to return here, what we're going to feed in is that JSON here. So essentially what this does is when we get that, what it does is when we get that function's argument piece of text that's not recognized as JSON, we can call this backend workflow via an API call. And that essentially adds this application JSON header, which allows Bubble to then recognize it. So we now need to go set up that API call, and we need to add another API. This is going to be our Bubble apps API. Again, very similar to ChatGPT. Private key and header, bearer. We get our API key in our settings, in our API section. There's two things on the API section here. We're going to need this endpoint. We're going to need our API key. So first of all, let's copy this API key, paste it in to our section here. We'll add our content type, application JSON, and then we'll go back, grab our endpoint for our workflows, go to plugins again, and hit paste there. We'll call this document JSON, change to post and action. And what we want to do is add a dash and add in exactly what we called our backend workflow. So if we go back, to be safe, I'll just copy it, paste it in here. And then we want to define what we're feeding in, which was that JSON is the parameter we called it. So if we go here, we'll open the curly brackets, add in our key, and then we can define it here. Add another curly bracket. If we make it dynamic, so we can dynamically change it. And what we will do is actually just delete the two quotations, because the way that ChatGPT gives it to us is already in quotations, so we don't actually need to add them there. Then we can go in and actually test that. So if we grab our payload, go to the raw data, and we just want to grab everything after arguments here, as well as the two quotation marks. So if we click save, we'll go in, paste that into here, hit initialize, and it says status error, message wrong method should be post. Okie doke. We click put. So if we do post initialize, you can now see we're recognizing that title and we've got that body here. Perfect. So now we've actually got a format of a document. We actually want to create that document within our database. So to do that, we want to call again our own API. And Bubble has some good documents on this here. So it's under Bubble API, the data API. Under API requests, we can go and find the request that we actually want to do. So get, we don't want to get a document that's already been created. We don't want to patch it, we don't want to edit, we don't want to put. What we want to do is create, which is post. So as you can see, it's calling this object API, and then it's type name here. Now, what type name is just the data type and the name of the data type. So whatever you called your data that you want to create, we call it document. You want to put that in the request. So what we'll do is we'll go to our plugins here, add another API call. We'll call it create document. It was post, call it an action. And we can actually get our endpoint here. So it's the data API endpoint. You see it's got the object ending. So we'll copy that. And one thing you really want to make sure is to make it a little bit easier, tick use field display instead of ID for key names. So if you click that, and then you also want to click the actual data type that you want to be able to access via the API, as well as making sure your privacy rules are not making it so that you can't actually access it. So if we actually go into data here, you can see that all my data types in this project are publicly accessible here. And you just want to make sure that the privacy rules are so that you can access it via API. So for example here, we could define a privacy rule user, if this is for your production application, and then you can say create via API, everyone else create by API, for example. But we'll just leave this to publicly accessible for now. So let's paste that endpoint in here. We'll add a dash and we'll say document, and then we're going to want to define what we're going to be adding in here. So if we double check what we actually had underneath here, we had body and we had title. So if we go to plugins, I'm going to define it again. So it's going to be title. Then if we add a comma, we can define the body as well, and then finish with curly brackets here. Let's make this dynamic as well. So let's create a document about, I don't know, fish. I love fish. Why not? And then if we hit initialize, you can see unauthorized arguments. Code, message, null, transition, invalid, or expired token. So there's something wrong with our token here, actually for our authentication. And if we scroll up, let's have a look at our authentication. We've got 2 spaces, so we're only allowed 1 space. So let's have another look. Okay, so body status error, message, unrecognized field body. So it's not recognizing the actual body field. So let's actually go back. We've added a space there. So let's go try again. Initialize. Perfect. So as you can see, you've got to be really careful with how you're programming this. But it's given us status success. We'll save that. And let's have a look in data, in documents, app data. We have fish, I love fish, amazing. So go back to our workflows now. We are ready to create that document. But first of all, let's edit our workflow of our button because we need to get our response back for just the usual chat experience here. So if we go over here, we want to create a new thing, create a new action. That thing is going to be message. We want content. We want JSON, and we want user again. The content is going to be the result of our API calls, choices, each item's message context. The JSON is going to be the same as this one, or similar. So if we copy that whole thing, go back to the message we want to create, paste that expression in, clear the expression, and then paste into here. We can now change this to assistant, change the user to assistant, and then change the content to, again, the result of step 4. So what we can actually do is just copy the expression, click on this expression, then paste the expression. Perfect. And then we're going to use that user empty here. Again, we want to update the chat, so we can copy that, paste the action in here, but then change the message we're adding as the result of step 5. And then we want to define some rules here, because we only want to do this when we're just chatting with the chatbot. We don't want to do it when we're creating the actual document. So what we'll do is we'll only run this when the result of step 4 choices tool calls first item, or tool calls function arguments, which is where we get that payload, Then we can say, we can only do it when each item is empty, first item. So if we copy that, we can then paste that again into the chat. And now we've got our chat set up. So let's just quickly make sure that's working. Okay. We haven't actually, okay. So before we can check this is working, we actually need to do the chat workflows here. So what we want to do is we want to go to our text here, do a conditional, and let's do when the message interfaces chat is the current sales chat, then we want to make this bold and then tick that box. We also, when we click this, we want to change that chat so that it comes up in our messages section. So when this is clicked, we can say set state of an element. That element is going to be the message interface, it's chat, and then the value is going to be the current sales chat. And then we want to go on to our button here. We want to add a workflow. We want to actually create a chat. So we create a new thing, chat. We'll make the name, the current date and time, formatted as, and then we'll choose custom here. So we'll have the day of the month 3, maybe. Probably don't want the year, but the time would be nice. But maybe that is a little long, so we'll delete that version of time. So we'll just do Friday, October. Cool, that seems reasonable. And then again, when we create that new chat, what we want to do is have the same workflow as the other chat. So we want to set that state so it comes up. So we'll do that again. Instead of the current repeating groups chat though, it's going to be the chat we just created. And one thing we can do is actually set a developer statement, which will tell the AI how to act. So it will kind of define what the first message back will be. So if we go here, you can see there's this developer message here. So what we'll actually do is we'll copy that, then we'll create a new thing. That thing will be a message. And all we want to define for this one is the JSON, because we don't want to have this message kind of appear up from the developer. So if we paste this developer message in, we can clear this expression. Now we can define how we want it to behave in this developer message. So if we say, be a helpful assistant, your role is to be a funny guy, but above all, help the user make documents. Okay, cool. And then as we create the chat, we can also add that message in, and then it will also come up in the history, so it will remember this message throughout the conversation. So we had the result of step 1. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's now see if we can chat with this AI. Let's do a quick little test here. So we'll create a new chat. Lovely. Say hello, and we're not getting a response back. So let's have a look why. So if we run that, okay, hi there. So it's got our written joke. Our issue is that when we're actually creating this message, this conditional statement is actually not working correctly, because we do have functions coming up, or it thinks it does. So what we'll do is we'll go here, go back to this section. So we're going to say we'll do this only when the message content, each item's not empty. So when it's actually sending us a message back, and then we'll make this the first item. So copy that, paste that into here, and then we'll reinitialize. So let's create a new chat. Hello, do step by step. Perfect. So now we've got that working. Hello there, double hello. So we've got a cheeky AI today. That's nice. So one thing, it's a little bit squished here, so we're going to go back to the 600 on the width, but it's working fairly nicely. So if we actually go back in, we'll go back to this chat, we'll say what was the first message in this chat, just to see if it remembers the history. Okay, so now it's saying that our role is incorrect. So invalid value assistant. So that's me not spelling assistant properly. So if we go back in, you probably have got this right because you're better at spelling than I am. But essentially, if we go to our workflows, into our create message section, make sure we've spelled it right. Let's try again. There we go. Sorted out. So now we've got our actual chatting interface working correctly. Let's ask it to... Now we've got this chat interface working correctly, let's build the workflow that is going to allow us to create that document. So if we go here, what we're going to want to do is we want to convert the JSON when the tool call is called. So we're going to want to do the bubble app JSON document. What we paste in here, what we want is our result of step 4, choices, tool calls, each function's argument, and that would be good. But what we do want to do is make sure it's formatted as a JSON safe, so that anything within the actual document doesn't throw off our backend process of converting it to a JSON object. So next up, what we want to do is call our create document workflow. And now we can grab that title and we can grab that body from that document JSON action. So now we've actually created that document, we need to display it in our group here. So what we want to do is set state of an element. That element is going to be our group message interface is document, and that document is going to be the result of step 6. And that document is now within our database, so we can do a search for document type, unique ID, and if we actually go here and create another document, we can see here that the ID, the unique ID that's been created is under the ID field here. So if we save that, go back to our workflows, the unique ID is going to be result of step 6, ID, and then the first item, so the only thing that comes up. Perfect. So now that's done, we can now set the state of the element. So now we've set the state of the element, what we do want to do is we want to change the visibility of our document group here. So group document, and we've already we've unchecked make it visible on page load, and it will collapse, so it's essentially not on the page right now. But when the group message user interface document is not empty, so there's a document, we want this to be visible. Perfect. The last thing we want to do is we don't want to actually just create all these documents when the function hasn't been called, if we're just chatting with the chatbot. So what we can do here is say we only want to run the JSON create document and then display workflows when our OpenAI call, choices, tool calls, each item function's argument's name, first item is, and if we go back, we can double check what our function is called. So we called it create underscore document. Go back to the workflows, is, and when that is called, all these workflows are going to run. Okay, so let's preview our document, create a new thing, say hello there. If we do this next one step by step, we can see how it's working. So we'll say make a document on how, go step by step. So we created our message, added it to the chat, it's come up, we reset the relevant input, lovely, passing that in, apps JSON, so it's created that document, and it's only running when the create document thing is created. Cool. Create the document. We're setting the state, and we're not creating the message. Lovely. So the last thing we've got to do was actually do our data flow into the document here. So if we go back, we can say that this is the parent group's documents title, and this is the parent group's documents body. So let's try again. We'll just run it this time. That is spelled horribly, Jesus. Let's see if it actually, or recognizes that I've said Trojan horse, but let's have a look. Perfect. How to build a Trojan horse. Amazing. So as you can see, we've got our document. It's created that within our Bubble database, and that's all through ChatGPT. I hope you enjoyed the video again, and as always, let us know what types of builds you want us to do next, and we'll reply in the comments. Thank you.
And just like that, you now have a custom chat experience that can interact with your Bubble database. If you found this video useful and you wanted to stay up to date with any additional Bubble resources we share, I'd always recommend hitting that subscribe button on our channel, so that way you can be the first to know whenever we drop a new tutorial. For now though, I just want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to watch this specific video, and I wish you all of the best on your own no-code journey.